So when I first moved here, there were cats that started coming around, and I posted some pictures. There's a big old cat that reminded me of a jungle volunteer that I sadly had to leave behind in Kalapana, and other ones, they'd dart into the apartment and started getting comfortable. And this one silver one, he looked like a white tiger with stripes, all kind of white and silver. Um, he looked really scrawny. He looked really bad, and he was just kind of not very trusting at first. But then he gained confidence and he came into the house and he'd eat and started trusting me. And then one day I found him. He climbed on my bed and he decided to make the corner of my bed that was close to the front entrance of the apartment his little hangout spot. And he'd spend the whole day there. And I just decided, well, he volunteered himself. I didn't really want to. Cats, they just grab your heart so much. So they, they kind of seduce you with their ways, and then you become very attached to them. But they're not like dogs. Dogs are more independent. There's more of give and take, more of a reciprocal thing. With cats, it's more like you're taking care of something precious and you got to walk on eggshells, always seeing what it wants and respect it when it doesn't want to hang around and all that. Um, and he started eating and he started sort of making he would like not leave the apartment. He would hang out by the sun on the front door where the sun hits in the afternoon, and he'd stay there and then come back and jump on the bed. And then I saw he had diarrhea. No, I first bought a kitty litter so that when the cold came, I thought, oh, these cats aren't gonna want to like stay indoors because, uh, it gets really cold here in the winter. So actually, I found out they don't. They have their places. They don't seem to care about the cold too much. But this one did stay and would spend the night here. He would sleep on a little pillow I put for him on the floor. And so I went and bought kitty litter, and I saw he had diarrhea. So I started treating him and with carbon and some stuff I bought at the pharmacy for, uh, you know, correcting his intestinal tract. Um, and lately I started noticing that he would just sleep 20 hours and not leave the bed. But he didn't look sick to me because I thought I was curing his diarrhea, but he still did cat-like things, like walk between your legs when he wants food, and when I bought chicken, he'd gobble it up. He seemed all right, and he got fat. He started gaining weight. So I thought I just had to get over this diarrhea hump. Um, all the other cats started not coming because it got cold in the afternoon. So I guess they have their places where they hang out, or maybe they just respected this cat. It's not aggressive, but he was a little defensive, and just for like the last 2 3 days, I started noticing he would just seriously sleep like 20 straight hours. Get up, come to the kitchen because he learned to use the kitty litter, and then he'd eat and these past day and a half or 2 days, he didn't even want to eat that much. And I thought, oh no, he's really sick. But I'm thinking, I know how this goes, and I, first of all, I ran out of money this week, and I'm not going to have money till for another 3 or 4 days. So I could, I suppose, go to the vet and beg them to let me pay him later or something. But my thinking is that when a cat is really sick, and I thought he only had diarrhea, but there was something about his spinal column was thin and his belly was kind of big, and I thought that had to do with parasites. So I had treated him his parasites, and I was curing his diarrhea, and he finally started going to the bathroom like hard, like normally. Um, but then yesterday I realized no, he's in bad shape. He does. You can't tell with animals. That's the thing. It's like they come around and they purr, and maybe you think, oh, maybe he's got a cold or something. Um, and just today I started seeing that no. So I'm thinking I'm kind of pragmatic. I mean, I have a good heart, and I'm very compassionate and empathetic and all that, but I have this pragmatic side, which I know that people get sucked into like $600 vet bills for something that the vets they won't tell you if they can't cure it, and they know that they need to make money. So since I know those situations, I kind of thought I better wait. And when I have some money in the third, if he seems like he's just coasting, I'll take him to the vet. Maybe there is something I can cure. But just now, like a few hours ago, I would go to the bed. He's sleeping on the corner of my bed, and he hissed at me for the first time, like, "Don't touch me." And I go, "Oh no." And I started already kind of seeing that this was it. He's in the process of dying. I just didn't think it was going to be so quick. And I started, I cleaned because I cured he had an infection in his ear. So I was like cleaning it with vinegar, and he would just let me clean his he wouldn't pull away or anything. He'd let me clean his ear with vinegar, and I clean his eyes. His eyes were starting to get full of crud, and I was cleaning that a lot. Um, Such a hard tugger. It's like, and so he got bothered, and he got up, and he came to use the kitty litter, and he did like a nice chunk of both pee and poop, real good quality, good quality turd. And I thought, well, maybe I don't know what's going on. But as soon as he just sat there and he wouldn't get up, and so when I tried to pick him up, he got bothered, but he let me get him out of the kitty litter. And as soon as he started to walk, he started falling on his side. And then I'm like, okay, this is it. I can see what's happening. And I took him to my bed, and he started heaving. He couldn't breathe right. It all started precipitating really quickly. And I thought, oh, I can't. You start feeling like you gotta do something. And all I could do was just try to give him as pleasant as possible. Get him to comfortably breathe, and he wasn't breathing. He was kind of starting to produce mucus, and just get his little head in an angle so he wouldn't choke on himself. And I was just caressing him. No idea how long it was going to last. And then I started fretting, and I put him he has like a kitty bed, like a big thing with pillows. And so I put him there, and I kind of angled his head so he wouldn't have a hard time breathing. But at some point he started having spasms, and I just tried to make him as comfortable as possible. I caressed his head, and I held it, and I was moving his little body around so that it would be nice and stretched out. And then at one point I saw, this is it. It's only going to be a few more minutes, and I think this is. It's like also grabbing me. I don't want to. He's dying, and I want him to be as comfortable as possible. Perhaps at this point, it's raining outside and it's kind of cold. So I covered him inside this little crate. He was having some spasms, but I wrapped him up so that he would feel more secure. And I took him outside under a tree, and I let the cold rain just kind of soak him. And I felt, the cold in the dark maybe is better at this point. And I just sat with him, and he did one more little stretch, and he just went right there. And I stayed, and I I did a little prayer, like like I just sat there, like I can't do lotus now, but on my knees, I kind of did a little Buddhist prayer, or meditation. I wasn't really chanting any mantras or anything, but I kept looking at him and touching him and putting my palm on him to see what was happening with his little body, and I wrapped him up like a Russian, like the Russian way of wrapping babies, where with this cloth I had, and at one point he was just completely nimble, like he was gone. He was completely gone. But there's still some stuff going on inside. I don't know if fluids are moving about. So I just waited and I sat there like that. And it's cold and it's raining, and I came back inside the apartment, and I got into a state of, this is weird because last night I was watching some palliative care and end of life people that decide to take their own life, and I follow these people. They it's very intense. It's like realism, like YouTube, internet realism, and you walk with this person. Basically, the friend films them day to day until the day they decide to drink the juice, and then you're there, you're watching the family, how they all grieve, and I was watching one of these videos last night, and that if I could have spared that little moment where he was choking, not being able to breathe right and having spasms, all I had to do was give him a little drug, give him something, give him a shot, to just help him relax and ease him through it. Not kill him, but at least a drug that would help him relax his muscles and flow into his state of death. But I don't, I can't go to a pharmacy and just buy it, We don't have that kind of culture. And so I was thinking about this program, and then I started thinking about some of my Gaia humanist ideas and what the gift of our intelligence, and the fact that we are blessed that we have this intelligence compared to all other animals in the world. We don't have to suffer hunger, disease. We could cure all diseases. And one of the ideas of Gaia humanism is that feasibly we could have a civilization where we no longer fear death because we handle it medically and we are okay with it, and we but there's so much stuff, and it's a whole theorem that I'm struggling with, because how do you talk about something where we're so ingrained and embedded in what has shaped the thinking of the average society from ancient times. It's not something you can overturn, overnight. And so I laid him under, I put the little crate under a tree outside where it's raining, and it's a little cold. I came in, had to change because I got all soaked. And then I just went outside again, but I couldn't there's a balcony in the other building. Underneath I have another crate for the big old cat that I also take care of, and he was not there. I guess my landlord told me that he opens one of the garages so that they can come inside in the winter, and so I just sat on that bench where his crate is right next to me. The crate where this big other cat, I built another crate for this other cat. And I sat there, and from there I can see it's like an outdoor space out front that's inside the private property, so it's not out on the street from my balcony here, I can see the street underneath, but if I go to the front, outside the front entrance, it's like a dead end private street, and just us who live here kind of are at this cul-de-sac kind of. And so, but there's more space. You can see more around you. And so sometimes I go out there and sit and just, I'm able to see more of the sky, and out that way and the other way and stuff, and some of the trees and a little bit of the forest on both sides. So I go and sit out there, and I was thinking, and all these thoughts were flooding in, like my mom's death and my dad's death and Kalele, and what the differences are, how with Kalele I was like preparing, so I don't think I didn't, so raw. I didn't expect this little cat to die. I actually thought that I wasn't really thinking until today. I started thinking, oh, maybe what I'm doing is I'm giving him palliative care. Now I understand that he was aware that he was sick since I saw him, and that's why he gave me the impression of that being like a little defensive, a little scared, like he was scared. And so I could tell, now I can tell that is the kind of fear that an animal maybe feel when they know they're sick, and they're just kind of guarded. They're looking all around, and they're seeing where they can walk slowly and find safety situations. And that's, now I understand it. Now I see the whole thing. And that's why he decided to grab the corner of my bed and make it his little hangout corner there. And then he would sleep under the desk here. I gave him that little crate that it didn't look like, until 2 days ago, it didn't look like he was sick. So this all was really fast, and it caught me a little off guard. But that made me also start meditating on things like life, and my thought was, I know that we're not alone, put it that way. I can't prove it, but I might as well have seen them, kind of thing. This is, maybe doesn't make sense, but I just know it. I can't explain it. I perhaps don't need to explain it. Maybe I'm not the only one, but now, whether we are created for a purpose, whether we are just inside something, being under beings that are way more intelligent than our, I don't know. I can't answer what beyond the word God is all about. I just know that that we're not alone, put it that way, and that there's very likely the world is intentionally, or very likely our intelligence, the fact that we're the only animal that is so much more intelligent than all the other animals, is not a coincidence. But I don't think anybody can explain it. So what I also know is that everything dies in the universe. It has a cycle, galaxies. And if galaxies have a start and an end, then the intelligence that has to do with that is also present with us, let's just say it that way, the intelligence that is also present in the world, or I don't want to get into breaking that down, because it's not even the point of what I'm trying to say, also itself has its form of death. And so I'm sure if along the lines of intelligence, beings that are 1,000 times or 100 times or 10 times more developed in their intelligence, or in an expression of intelligence that is because that they're more, I'm sure of, that they're much more than us. What exactly they're more of, maybe we can't know, or I don't know at least. But I know that there's life much more intelligent, much more advanced, much more evolved, I don't know, however you want to say it, than us. But it also knows death, because everything dies in the universe. And so if whatever notion we may have about beyond the Word of God, creators, others we share the universe with, or also would not want to die, not want to. And if they found a way of recycling their being, like just going into another body or regenerating their bodies, it's always because they really prefer not to die. And if they got to a point where they say, okay, I'm okay with ending, if they probably got there after a long period of facing not wanting to die, like any animal doesn't want to die, any living conscience doesn't want to die. So all this to say that we're perfectly justified, we're perfectly normal in not wanting to, in feeling we don't want to die. We may process it. Okay, so one of the situations of talking about this is that humanity has answered that question for itself. Yeah, we, later we either go to heaven or hell if we're bad and all that. And there's an eternal life afterwards and stuff. But the point is, this is what we got. And perhaps we should be only concerned with what world we create for the next generation, because even if we were to somehow reemerge in another form, life form, and then look back, we still get to that point preferring not to die, preferring not to go through suffering, preferring not to. It can be scary. I mean, there's a lot of people who say the moment of death was that they saw a light and they were taken into a tunnel. I, for myself, can say that wasn't my experience. What I felt is I started really palpably seeing that I had no idea what was going to happen, but that I was going there. This was one time I almost drowned in Maui. And I saw what possibly everybody feels when they start approaching death and there's nothing they can do about it. And there are other things that happen to your mind too, which that I do hear other testimonials say, that you start thinking, like revising, asking someone, something greater than you, hoping that your desire to continue living is acknowledged. But so the point is, we're perfectly justified, we're perfectly entitled, or we can only do good by making a world where the future generations, which will be you and me, because each one of us in the world is somebody that came to a world created by everybody else. So there is no difference between you and me and people who have lived before us or people that are going to be born still, insofar as we will all experience this world. And so, like any one of us in the future, in the past, or in the present, would say, gee, I sure wish that since we design our world, because we create our civilization, they had made it so that I don't have to go through that, or I don't have to ever be born in a prison, or in a war, in the middle of a war, and be tormented and killed by the age of 5, or there's so many things that we would say. I hope that the next time any human being, because the Hinduist idea of being reincarnated is not different to the metaphysical awareness that it doesn't matter, because you were not born before you were born. Okay, wait, let me explain that better. The metaphysical continuity of importance is every time reborn or reenacted with every birth. So, because all we know is this existential form as human beings, and all we can know is what the human mind can show us, can tell us, can teach us, can have us experience. Every single life that is born is just as important as every other life, or matters the same, and therefore, but there's one thing that does change, and that is the civilization we create. It's like our beehive, and we continue to be born inside of it. And so, therefore, it behooves us to work at making this the best experience possible that we can do, we can achieve with our intelligence for everybody else that will be born from now on. Because certainly that is what we would want other peoples to have wanted for us, for our life. I don't, if this makes sense. It's a concept that is like reincarnation, but instead of being esoteric or divine in its conceptualizing, it's very scientific and practical and realist. It is totally realist. Because when you create a world where every baby's guaranteed to not be born inside a war or into disease or into an inescapable poverty, or what you're doing is you're giving that world to yourself. And it's all that we can do is make the world that we want ourselves to be born in. Ultimately, if you realize that all we have, all we know, all we got is what we know is life. Everything else is just stuff we came up with, but we really don't know, and that is kind of hard to talk about today. We can't talk. We really don't know if there's a paradise or we're reincarnated, or if there's a hell. There probably isn't, but imagine that. Can somebody, why would you want to torture some? We come up with this stuff, but it's all we created with all this stuff, obviously directed at ourselves, at others, for whatever reasons and purposes. And to divest ourselves from these books and these things that we believe is perhaps one of the first most important things that we can do as a civilization today, is start from scratch and say, okay, so what are our problems? Our problems is that we have to deal and contend with our animal primitive nature, or rather our advanced intelligence, this amazing gift that makes us different to every other animal, has to contend with our nature that we can't rid ourselves of. And so there's this perpetual imbalance, this perpetual instability of our egoic super intelligence that is kind of rooted and tied to the handler, which is wonderful when it does great things, and very messed up when it is directed by our primitive, fearful, greedy, suspicious aspects of our ancient primitive mind. But then we can see that because we have an intelligence that can understand why our mind exists in this paradoxical, perpetual unbalance. We understand sciences. We can say, well, evolution embedded this in us, and we're never going to get rid of us. We're always going to try to run with the goods once we have something, or when we see something that's weak on the ground and it's surrounded by treasure, we're going to start thinking, oh, well, it's going to die now. Maybe I can get a little closer, see if I can grab everything. This is stuff that comes from our fear of not being able to survive. It's what evolution created the base animal as. But we exist as one with this amazing intelligence, which kind of starts hinting at a possibility that it's intentional, that something graced us with a gift. Says, okay, here's an intelligent animal with potential, seems like us, according to scripture, we're supposed to be similar to our creators. Let's say we are. Uh, let's soup it up a little bit. Let's accelerate. In a few thousand years, the species will break off, and then it will kill all the other ones that were left behind, and it will be the only thing that is surviving on top of dominating all the animals in the world. And we'll just wait for it to discover that it's not coincidence, that now it can no longer suffer what all the animals subjected to: gravity and biological disease and cold and everything else. They don't have to, because they have this amazing gift, but we haven't really embraced this amazing capacity as an intentional gift given to us by more advanced beings. We have written stories and books and scripture that says we were just created, and we explain this contention of dealing with our rotten side of self, our smallness of coming from primitive nature. We explain it differently. We're born in sin, and there's a devil that's also, living here, and it will come up and surprise people or possess people, and all this stuff. But we really don't have a scientific explanation that looks cosmically at our existence as something that feasibly was created by actual intelligent consciousness in the universe. And it seems that we have an advantage that no animal has. For one thing, we can avoid what my little kitty went through with ourselves. We can make sure that none of us go through that. We can make sure that nobody has cold, every disease is curable, or that we cure all diseases. We can understand the ecology and see, okay, we have to leave diseases. We have to let them keep other stuff busy, but we can have cures for when they, we can become so intelligent with ecological sciences, where it's not about attacking life, but it's actually about swimming optimally in the fullest expression of ourselves, thanks to our sciences. And that would mean curing everything or eradicating diseases that won't affect ecology if they're eradicated. I know there's some kind of winging that area of science, I suppose, but the concept is always the same. If you understand a little bit about self-sustainable agriculture, you don't want to kill things. You want to let them, maybe divert them and deal with them, or balance the situation. We have to balance ourselves. We won't eradicate our human nature. We will have tendencies, but we also want what is better. And we're also preferring, as a mind, we prefer peace. We prefer stability. We prefer abundance. We prefer sharing. We prefer a lot of things. There's not this inescapable, sabotaging betrayal of evil that will show up when you least expect it. No, that's just a story we created. In reality, we can see that we can thrive and be stable, living in peace and just teeming with all the stuff that we're capable of doing without even arguing, and getting all fired up without wanting to separate and harm or war and kill. That's like, why? We really don't want that. We want to be able to feel comfortable, and our human primitive nature will come up and, have. But the more honest we are, the more we can deal with it. The more sincere we are with ourselves about how we are, the better we'll be able to make a world that accommodates things, and that stability, that preference of peace will be able to expand or reign or predominate successfully. The separation is a non-necessity. Life and evolution has no separation. A situation with, I don't want to get into that logic, why because we're not accountable. We don't own the understanding of ourselves. We have delegated understanding the human condition, the existential condition, to an outside will, which we don't know. We say we do, but we don't. And because we relegated the accountability and the purpose and the will of our human predicament. We have stripped ourselves, we have disempowered ourselves from saying, well, let's try to make it so that we can, handle it, deal with this primitive nature that we have to live with. Because really, we also don't want to be harming and hurting and dividing and attacking. It's kind of uncomfortable in reality. If you look around, it's not the preference of life. You know, and animals do it basically to survive and to predominate. But if they can't avoid it, if they can't avoid hunting and killing and attacking, they do. They prefer to exist in peace, whether they are lone rangers on the savannah or whether they are herds. You see that the preference of life is stable peace, thriving, existing according to the form evolution gave that living form. So since we already know, we can understand what causes us to, well, that's a whole other thing. Really, what my this sort of monologue confessionary is about is he never I never gave him a name. I never gave my cat a name. This little cat that was about to be my cat. I would call him Silver Bally or something. Ball, like ball. I always call my animals like Pallone, Palloncino, Bull. I don't know why I make that sound. Like a ball of life, like a plume. So I don't want to get into Gaia humanism and bore everybody. It's only 40 minutes, so I'm going to just stop it here. But I guess what am I trying to say? What I guess I was having a lot of experiences. I was processing a lot of emotions and feeling. One thing, for example, that happened just now is because I was in a moment of oneness with the experience, the sort of the universal experience of the end of life. For whatever reason, I didn't want to come back into the apartment. I just sat out there and started looking, and it was raining. It was getting a little chilly, but I just wanted to be outside, and it made me remember why I was so happy in Kalapana. Because I felt I lived outdoors. I felt like I didn't have to go inside. And then I started thinking, are we all kind of detached from Mother? These ideas are kind of new agey, but I kind of get where a lot of people are rooted in these notions. I feel it. The problem is that if you say something too many times, it stops having meaning. But I get it. I see, perhaps, living inside buildings and structuring is something we won't be able to escape, but it really is also keeping us from being in touch with organic, with simplicity, with Mother Earth. We get in here and we got our little routines, and we clean the apartment, and then people keep us busy with their things and their concerns, and we get involved and we forget. All of a sudden, we're no longer in that outdoor space. I was just contemplating, reminding me of how free I felt in Kalapana. It was such a dream. My cats would be come in and out. They'd come and go as they wanted. They lounged around inside the shack because they wanted to, not because they had to. And Kalele was totally happy, just looking at the stars with me. And we'd go on lava walks in the middle of the night, and we'd hear the whales in the ocean far away. And it was such a beautiful, beautiful thing. A period, such a beautiful time in my life. Those almost 3 years that I lived in that in-between, at the border of the lava, where the forest, the edge of the lava, I was like in the best of both worlds. I had the mango forest and the Hawaiian walls right there. Like I could step down from the lava and there they were. And at the same time, there was all this new growth that I could easily shape into my spaces of garden around the shack. And I could find steps on the pahoehoe and I'd make a garden with little rooms made out of, surrounded by it's not rubbish tree, but they're called, it's a fast growing tree, I forget what they're called. How tree maybe? Um, and so they would make the space around the clearing on the pahoehoe, and I would connect these spaces with little, I was making like a garden house, garden house. My dad called the restaurant garden house once, um, because it had no roof, but you could go from one room. So I was gonna lay down grass patches on the pahoehoe, and I started actually one day. I was coming back home and somebody was changing their yard and they were throwing out all this grass, and so the gardeners, the workers, were stripping the grass off, and it was coming out in what do you call them, breads, right? Sheets of grass. Oh, can I have them? And I go, yeah, yeah. So somebody gave me a ride, and I was carrying all this stuff home, and I made one of these little pads I had conceived in my imagination in front, like in one of these outdoor rooms. And so there were going to be several of them, and every room had its own character. It was weird. Like there was another little space, and just because it was a little higher, it was a little further into the mango forest, almost surrounded by it. It had a different feel. It was so architectural, and there was so little construction that happened. All I did was clean. I didn't build anything, but it was all about architecture. It was so interesting. Um, well, okay, so I miss you all. I don't know who's gonna see this, but you might know who I mean. Aloha.